I wasn't always a conservative slash libertarian. I say slash libertarian because there are many views with which I don't agree with the establishment, conservative establishment, such as the legalization of marijuana, for example. I don't see any problem with that. I think people should be able to choose what they want to do. But I wasn't always this way. In fact, when I graduated high school, I was a leftist, progressive. I don't want to use the word liberal because the word liberal has changed its meaning. It means different things to different people. So I'll just say progressive, which is what they indoctrinated me to be, which is the intent of public education, by the way. That is the intent. But I got a huge wake-up call in 1989. My family decided to move to Africa, and we lived there for 4 months. And after 33 hours on the plane, we arrived in Lusaka, Zambia, and we booked ourselves in at the Intercontinental Hotel. And after 14 hours of sleep, because that's a long trip, I woke up, I turned on the TV. And the first program, because it was morning, the first program I saw was there was a large room that was painted green. Later I realized it was because of the national colors, because of the national flag. And there were probably from 50 to 100 people on bleachers. And they were being conducted by somebody, and they were singing music, and there was a man standing at a podium, and it was not in English, but there were subtitles. And at first glance, I was like, this has to be religious, it must be Sunday, some Catholic thing or whatever. And I started reading the subtitles, and they weren't praising God, they were praising Kenneth Kaunda, who was the Prime Minister of Lusaka at the time. And that was my first taste of what a third world country run by a socialist leader looks like. The cult of personality, despotic air, if you will, of that culture. And I was so taken aback. I still remember it very vividly. And through the course of the 4 months I was there, I was able to see the classrooms of schools and the pictures of Kenneth Kaunda on the wall. And he's on the news, and everybody's quoting him, and they all fawn over him, and he wears these white robes, and he has this little fan to wipe off the fans, but he uses it like a gavel, or like a, I don't know, very, very messianic. And so I did some research into him later, and I realized that he was worth, at the time, around $300 million, and this is in the 80s. I can't put that into today's money. Probably billions. And 6 months out of the year he spent in Paris, France. The other 6 months out of the year he spent in Zambia, mainly around the election time. The elections were always rigged. There was no true election, as is commonplace in any third world country that's run by a socialist leader. Kenneth Kaunda was catapulted to power under anti-colonial and equitable rhetoric. He told the people, hey, the rich are too rich, the poor aren't getting what they need. The colony, the British have been oppressing us. We need to push this back. Same rhetoric you heard all throughout the 80s and 90s on the entire continent of Africa, not just Zambia. And I'm not trying to point out Zambia. I'm just using Zambia and Africa as a microcosm of a larger problem that's endemic all over the world. So please don't think I'm trying to make some sort of racial illusion. So anyway, one of the things that he was extremely corrupt. He lived in like a 5x5 mile palatial estate in the heart of Lusaka with his own personal zoo, on top of these massive 30-foot walls that have razor wire and motion sensor cameras. And right outside, literally leaning against the wall, were hundreds of people begging for people, just begging. I mean, poverty in Africa is not like poverty in the United States. Imagine having one article of clothing to your name, and that's it, right? I mean, no shoes, no place to bathe, no fresh water. I mean, the poverty in third world countries is at another level. Anyway, I remember seeing this as an 18-year-old and looking at that, and I thought, man, what is up with this disparity? How can somebody live in such lavish luxury when literally outside his door, his own people are dying of starvation? And they praise him for it. That's the craziest thing. They praise him the entire time. They sing songs to him. Just, it's mind-blowing. But there was no middle class at all. There was the military elites, the generals that had money. There were the politicians that had money. And there were maybe one or two businessmen in the country that ran maybe, a couple of industries that had money. And that was it. And that was the plutocratic, aristocratic, oligarchical structure that ran the entire country of Zambia. I can't speak for it now. Okay, I cannot speak for it now. I don't know anything about the Zambian politics now. But back then, that made such an impression on me because his rhetoric was all about equity. And what do you hear today? Equity, 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 equity. Well, the French Revolution was based upon equity, right? And that led to the Reign of Terror. Why? Because it's impossible to have equal outcomes. The only way that you could possibly have equal outcomes is if everybody was the same. People aren't the same. Thank God we're not the same. But there is no way to have equity in a society where people have free will. The only way to have equity is to destroy free will, is to destroy freedom. And I saw it firsthand when I was 18, and it made such an impression on me that over the course of the last 30 odd years, I've spent my entire time studying socialism. There is no equitable society. It cannot exist.